Hi, Jim Roddy here from the RSPA. Wanted to chat with you for a minute before we started today's pod. First, it's been about 6 weeks since our last episode, and that's because we've been busy compiling the 2026 RSPA Retail IT Channel KPI study, which is going to be the focus of today's episode. Something else that's kept Team RSPA busy is making the necessary preparation, so I can announce to you today that registration is now open for Retail Now 2026, the Retail IT Channel's #1 trade show, education conference, and networking event. Join RSPA and Retail IT Channel leaders live and in person July 26th to the 28th in Las Vegas at the new Caesars Forum Convention Center attached to Harrah's and the Link hotels. With nearly 200 exhibiting organizations, Retail Now is one-stop shopping for VARs and ISVs. And with an expected 1,600 or more attendees, it's the place for extreme industry connectivity. Across just 48 hours, you'll meet new partners, new solution providers who can accelerate the success of your business. So if you're serious about the Retail IT Channel, you have to attend Retail Now 2026, July 26th through 28th in Las Vegas. Retail Now is where the industry meets. For all the details and to register at discounted early bird rates, visit the Retail Now website today at gorspa.org/retail now. That's gorspa.org/retail now. I hope to see you there, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to another episode of the Trusted Advisor podcast and video series powered by the Retail Solutions Providers Association. Our goal on the pod is to accelerate the success of today's and tomorrow's leaders in the retail IT industry. I'm Jim Roddy, back with you again. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, we have a very special episode for you today because the RSPA recently published its 2026 Retail IT Channel KPI study. It's the 10th year of this report, a full decade of it. And we've invited back two veteran channel executives to help us dig deep into the numbers and tell you what it all means for VARs, for ISOs, for MSPs, for vendors, and for distributors. Now, before we meet our guests, if you want your own copy of the 2026 RSPA Retail IT Channel KPI study, go to gorspa.org, find resources, then select industry reports from the drop-down menu. Or you can just Google RSPA industry reports. It should be your first result. If you get the Racket Sports Professionals Association report on pickleball, that's the wrong one. You should go to the next one. It'll be the KPI study for RSPA industry reports. All right, our first guest analyst today is Dean Riverman. He's the Chief Marketing Officer for value-added distributor Blue Star. Dean joined Blue Star in 2011 after 12 years working for a Kentucky-based VAR. Dean's a member of the RSPA marketing community, and he's co-host of the award-winning Blue Star Nation podcast. This is Dean's fourth year helping us analyze the KPI study. Dean, welcome back. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here. 4 years, and information just keeps getting better and better. We're honored to be a part of this whole process. So thank you for inviting us here.
Well, glad to have you do it. And since it's 4 years, and because there's homework required for this one, I think you might not be getting a diploma at the end of this. It seems like you've kind of earned some sort of a degree here. So congratulations.
At least a green jacket or something. Like what's the right? Yeah.
Yeah, for the masters. Yes,
right,
perfect.
Right.
No, happy to have you do it. We'll see what the budget can allow. So, our second guest is Jamie Interdonato. He's the president of ISV RPower. RPower has a strong reseller channel, and Jamie's been active in the RSPA for many years, including as a member of the RSPA niche and startup ISV community. He was a guest way back on episode 18, talking about the future of ISVs. Jamie, it's been too long. Welcome back to the Trusted Advisor.
Well, thank you very much, Jim. Appreciate you having us. So yeah, I was just asking you, 18 was quite a while ago. So still rocking and rolling, right? It's good to be back and be part of it.
Yes, in the future of ISVs, well, we should listen to episode 18 and see how much of that came true.
Find out if we projected our own futures here.
Yes, and you were on that episode with Jeff Riley from RMH. We'll have to bring you guys back together and critique your work. So we asked Dean and Jamie to help us analyze a KPI study because of their broader perspective of the channel, right? Like we said, Jamie's an ISV. He works with many reseller partners and has for years. Blue Star works with hundreds of VARs and ISVs and vendors throughout North America. So Dean's got a front row seat to all the changes in the solution provider community. So I want to keep the first part of our conversation as open-ended as we can get. So the KPI study is like over 9,000 words long, plus thousands of digits. So Jamie, I'm curious, from all that data, what was the first thing that jumped out to you from the report that you want to talk about?
I think probably a few different points, right? There's, as you mentioned, ton of data, ton of information that's there and available to look at. And I think probably a few points that I would jump out. One is just the widespread health of the types of entities, if you will, that are part of the community piece. There's such a good range of what I would say is the smaller shop VARs and or ISV groups, as well as some really large scale groups that are in there. So I think the representation factor of the studies being put together on is encompassing, if you will, the entire community as a whole in a group. So I think that's one, and kudos to your team for getting and putting everything together. I think as Dean mentioned, it just gets better and better with the takeaways and being able to look at. I think the other thing from a number standpoint that kind of jump out at me a little bit is that one, I think I'm jealous of a few people, right, after looking through and numbers and know where we in our power sit and where some of the other metrics are. So it gives us some good targets to be able to get to. But I think the takeaway from my standpoint is probably almost, I would say, a resurgence piece from looking at where positivity, the very limited number of groups that are in that flat space or in that negative space, and then the groups of where we're kind of seeing a healthy market of, I think I would say is that for the last several years, there's been a lot of, for lack of a better term, chaos, so to speak, I think in our space. And I think what you're seeing is the settling of all of that and people kind of re-getting their footing and getting back into what we've been historically, right, is being service-oriented groups with people and figuring out different ways to spread our revenue across the different aspects and opportunities that we have with our customer base. But I think that's kind of the takeaway at the end for me is really kind of the resurgence of figuring out where your revenue structures are, right, and being positive from that bottom line. And then the other side of it, I think, is the opportunity or the optimism and opportunity from a go forward. And I think I can say how that reflects back to me from being a reseller, being very big in partner, 100 plus different integration partnerships that our power works with, is there is definitively a resurgence of partnerships that are happening in our space, right? Where lots and lots of groups in every different avenue in the technology service field and supporting fields and integrations and partnerships that are happening. It used to just be, hey, it's point of sale and merchant services kind of was the thing. And now we are continually making partnerships with the likes of whether it's payroll carriers, online ordering companies, gift and loyalty, right? Those groups seem to be doing a much better job of bounding together than I think that ever before, right? It's that seeing partnerships for a lot of the small and mid-market groups in the vendor space, if you will, are really taking hold of one another and figuring out how we can partner to give that better solution, better service, better support, and better revenue growth for all of us, right, across the board.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Dean, can you build upon that? What Jamie said, the resurgence of the value and the increasing importance of partnerships. The anecdote that I tell is you used to go to NRF for your National Retail Federation show. You'd visit a vendor booth and they're like, if you work with us, like all your dreams will come true because we have the best of everything. But now it's very much, hey, we are very easy to integrate with because we know there's no one company that can keep up with it. So if all those folks are looking for partnerships, it just seems like it's been accelerating throughout. So Jamie or Dean, can you build upon what Jamie said about the resurgence of partnerships?
Well, you're absolutely right, Jim and Jamie. I mean, there's, in order for resellers and ISVs, the ecosystem to survive, it's dependent on the ecosystem. And I mean, we've been talking about solution selling for a long time and focusing in on business outcomes. Well, when you're a traditional reseller who might be myopic in, I just do hardware or I just do, a certain level of services, Well, the bad news is you're probably on the long tail of those that are kind of dying out within the channel. The folks that are really starting to see and continue to see growth, and I think that comes out in the survey that we'll talk about here in just a second. Those are the folks that are partnering up with other people that are leveraging their services but amplifying their services through other partnerships, whether it's through software, through API connections, or just services that they're offering. That is definitely who's winning, and that is the model moving forward. You can't be the one trick pony as we talked about in the past. You have to be kind of a multifaceted type of an entity. And so partnerships, we talk about it all the time, right, Jim? It is absolutely critical in order for growing your business. No doubt about it.
Yeah, very well said. And so, Dean, before I get your point, what both of you said reminded me. So Jeff Riley from Retail Management Hero, he was our board chair last year, and he was, giving his first presentation. He described our ecosystem as a mesh network of independent entrepreneurs, right, who could go in so many different directions. And the analogy was like, it's almost like a fleet of very small boats, and they can turn very quickly and adapt to things. Where if you have just a big one size fits all, it's really hard to turn and adjust, and you can only go in one direction there. So I guess, Jamie, can you build upon that in terms of, like, if you ask me, I would bet on the fleet of small boats to win the war rather than just the one big boat. Is that kind of what you're seeing as well, Jamie, here in the 10th year of this report?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's, we've all kind of, the ecosystem is a big deal. And I think what I would say there seems to be a rebound from the one size fits all, right? Is kind of where someone is now force feeding, hey, we've got, if the ecosystem, for instance, is just our power and you have to only use our power services and software, and you have to use our payroll, or you have to use our gift and loyalty, or data sciences partners, or AI, or whatever the case may be, is that you can't be the best at everything. You just can't, right? And so, and what is the power, I think, in the RSPA community and the ecosystem that is that you have best of breed of the entirety of different applications that are out there, or softwares, or services, and hardwares, and all these different components. And so now the partnerships and working together is that idea of being able to work or rely on the specialty group, right? That doesn't mean that they're so small that they can only service a limited number of client or number of group. It's just that their concentration, their expertise is done in one marketplace, right? Or one component of what services a customer. And, it's that the idea of what is it, the cliche of, things out of the sum of the parts is greater than the whole, right? And that's where I see that kind of what RSPA as a whole kind of represents. And what also I see from the merchant community itself of who we service is they've kind of dipped their toe in the water, and I wouldn't even say dip their toe. They probably got waist deep now, right? With trying to go for lack of a better way to put it, the elephants in the room, right? The big brand groups and the merchant services groups that are buying up, gobbling up, or just buying market space. And I think they've gone through, if you will, a contract cycle with those groups to find out that, hey, this is not what we need. We need, as independent as we are in our sector, in the hospitality space, we create our own burger, our own pizza, right? We're not selling the same thing, and one size doesn't fit all. So for them to be able to kind of lean back on human capital, which is, I think, what all of us at RSPA are really good at, is that service aspect, the relationship building piece, and then having the technology foundation. So I think it's that idea and that component of, the resurgence, if you will, of human capital. People have tried on the shoes, so to speak, of the one size fits all, or the ocean liner, so to speak, in our analogy here. And they're looking at better as having a whole bunch of special forces, right? Those small boats, small groups,
well said.
Targeted insurgents, right?
Well said. Yeah, all those small boats are not all the same. They're all, like you said, special forces. Yeah.
Yep.
Very good. Dean, what's the number one thing? Yeah, I love that analogy too. I'm going to steal it, Jamie. Just so you know, I'll give you credit the first time I use it, and then I'll own it from after that. So, Dean, what was the number one thing that jumped out to you? What really caught your attention from this study?
So I want to pick up on some things that Jamie was keying on, but I'm sorry, Jim, I don't have one. I got three, because there's just so much good information in here, right? So number one, the VAR model is not dying. So we're going to pick up a little bit on what we were just talking about there. Near record margins. How is that possible, right? That was a headline for me. And then finally, are VARs too dependent on payments? I think that's a really, really good question. And we got to dive into that a little bit because I'm just going to throw out soft pause, right? Nobody's talking about that, so we got to start talking about it. But anyway, VAR model not dying. When you look at the survey, and again, this survey is just what it's so good for is how much data is in there and what you can extract out of it. But as the data indicates, nearly 1/5 of VARs, or basically 20%, achieved a 20% growth in 2025. Now, to Jamie's point, what he was saying, early in the year there was a lot of chaos. If you remember, I mean, tariffs were going into place, and there was a lot of uncertainty in the market. I would say in H1, a lot of reasons to like pull back or not be sure what's going on. Well, we actually saw a tremendous amount of growth overall in 2025. So I think to Jamie's point is valid, and it's coming through in the numbers here in the sense that the chaos settled, people got to work, and people understood, that there are still opportunities out there. So when you have 1/5 of the audience out there achieving 20% growth or better, that's good. But what it's also indicating, when you look back, Jim, over the years, that's been pretty consistent, right? For the last 3-4 years or so, you're seeing that you've got this upper tier, if you will, of resellers that have figured out how to achieve high double-digit growth. And then you've got a lot of them out there, unfortunately, that still haven't. So I'm inclined to think that you've got a lot of VARs out there who have figured out recurring revenue, services, how to be more efficient. Those are the ones that are winning, that are growing 20%. But then you've got this long tail of other resellers out there that aren't. They're only growing at whatever in the low single digits, and that's a little bit scary, especially in a year like 2025, which was a pretty good year for most. When you look at it, we've got our own internal, we call it our churn data, where we look at like how many resellers are out there. And I think you referred to this in the survey too. We see an erosion of overall resellers in the marketplace. It goes down about 4 or 5% every year. But so that's the bad news. But the good news is that those are still out there. And as indicated in here, a lot of them are still trying to have figured out a way to be profitable. Do you want to hover on that one for a little bit, or should I go into my other
Yes,
two?
and especially I want to see if you're seeing the same thing, Dean. So we're seeing fewer of your traditional resellers, like all we do is resell, but we're seeing VARs who are starting to add a software component to their business, some own proprietary software. And then we're seeing a lot of niche providers come in, like focusing on a niche vertical, and they lead with their own software. I always call them reluctant resellers. They're like, I have this software. I guess I got to put it on something, and I guess it's got to have a receipt printer, right? But they end up selling the whole solution, but they're leading with that, and then they're bundling all the services around that. I don't know if that's what you're seeing, is the one group is shrinking a little bit. You're starting to see those other groups pop up.
Absolutely. And we know how much we love nichiness around here. I mean, if you get vertical expertise, the data is clear, and the surveys, just other information that you'll see in the marketplace indicate that vertical strength is a pillar that you can kind of lean into. So I wouldn't be shy about that at all. And yes, we're seeing it in the marketplace. Yeah. To your point.
Dean, what's your take? Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Dean. If you could, or I'm sorry, Jamie, if you could build on what Dean just added there before we get to the whole payments aspect that he brought up. What's your take on what Dean said about some really healthy VARs and then that long tail effect, but overall doing pretty well?
I don't know that there's much to comment other than yes, correct. The data is the data and shows out. I think that long tail, I think, is getting shorter and shorter as time is going on, and you're seeing groups being. I think it's kind of almost it's that adage of, I guess, how it goes, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? Mm-hmm. Is that figuring out, how to set your organization apart, figuring out verticalizing yourself, where those benefits are. It's the ideas, I think, as we just mentioned before, is RSPA is made up of whatever thousands of entrepreneurs, right? And I think that's the spirit in RSPA, and reseller and VAR community is figuring out how to continue down that spirit of entrepreneurialism, right? And figuring out your niche and where you fit in the marketplace. The marketplace is it still exists, right? The marketplace, it hasn't shrunk. It's not like restaurants have gone out of business or grocery stores or retail has gone out of business, right? The marketplace has shifted, and there's more and more technology that is dependent in the marketplace than there ever was before. And so I think that's where kind of that change and that shift is, and why groups are what they're doing is they're figuring out, right, how to be more technologically apt and how to be that expert in verticalized spaces. Lots of communications on, well, hey, picking up whether it's MSP services or AI services, or, you know what, how do we build custom software solutions? Because as we all know, right, based on the AI models right now, even internally in my staff, right, we're seeing groups create very unique one-off packages that are software solutions that are meant for small establishments, right? And so I think to build on is one is, yes, it's great to see the healthy numbers out of groups that are reaching that 20% plus growth, right? I think those are just, they're focused in the organization of figuring out, hey, how do we carve ourselves out? How do we make our niche? How do we end up expanding on those pieces? And I think that long tail I see is getting shorter. The question that I always kind of have is, the long tail getting shorter is because those groups are stopping, those are the ones that haven't figured it out. And so they're going away, right? Or is it that I think it's just there's less and less of them, if you will. Right. As time continues.
I don't disagree, Jamie. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and when we look at our churn, the erosion is definitely happening in that tier. That is where we're seeing the most, the smaller, truly smaller resellers that obviously they're not of the growth mindset, I guess, haven't really bought into that. But, the second headline, Jim, that I had was that near record margin. I think that really plays well to where what Jamie was just saying, in the sense that, okay, because we talk about it, right? I mean, you talk about it at most of the events, and the worry is that there's margin erosion that's happening in the marketplace. But what I'm buoyed by with this survey is that margins remain relatively healthy. So the data shows the best year in margins was back in 2022. When 73.9% reported double-digit margins. Well, this year, 2025, wasn't that far off, 71.9, so call it 72%, are still enjoying double-digit margins. So that's good. To me, that means there's still healthy ways in which VARs are finding ways to be profitable, right? If you're still making double-digit margin, this is a good thing. So I think that just gives you a little bit more evidence of the fact that, the resellers that are out there that have figured it out are truly figuring out ways to be profitable. And like I said, that's just good news if you ask me.
Yeah, it's just harder to get those margins. Right before it was, I'm partnering with a really good vendor and they give me a great deal on stuff, so I get great margins. Now you have to, I think, like Jamie said, have to cobble together all these different services and vendors. Yeah, and that's why I think it touches on what you guys were talking about, that longer tail, it's getting shorter. What I've seen is it's the less sophisticated resellers that are going away, right? If they had a very simple product offering or simple, stack that they put together. And I had somebody tell me directly one time, all this stuff is really interesting, but I'm 65. Like, I'm not looking to reinvent myself at age 65. So I'm going to wind this, as much as I can on
a lot of them out there like that, Jim. Yeah.
Right. On my payments. And then I'll end up selling it to somebody who's got, the energy and then the room in front of them in order to go do something, with it over a longer period of time. So,
yeah.
Go ahead, Jamie.
I was going to say, I think there's a valid point on the time with the retirement aspect thing. If you think about where we are in probably business or kind of entrepreneurial life cycle, so to speak, is that if you think and you go all the way back, whether it's pick your age, right? Whether it's the mid 90s when you kind of started and technology really started to kind of show its face and into the sectors, if you will, the business markets. If you think about that, you're talking 30 years ago, right? So the entrepreneurs that were in their 25s, 30s that were starting out and doing technology and as a service, if you will, in some capacity, or softwares, if you will, they're getting up to that kind of close to that retirement age pieces. They're the 60 plus, right? And so I think you're seeing some of that is where that tail is shrinking off, is those groups that are trying to figure out transitioning out, whether it's transitioning to retirement, whether it's turning around and letting their business, if they are in that lower settle, they're not really selling off as much as going away, right? Versus the ones that have figured it out and are kind of consolidating to that new level or new group of entrepreneurs in the space. So, and I think just as you mentioned, one of the other things I think is finally changed for the good overall is that the reseller community has figured out that all of their revenue and all of their money doesn't come from one source, right?
Yes.
It's the idea is that, I mean, I can remember back in the early days of our power, it was like, oh, well, if you sell our power, guess what? All of your money comes from just selling our power. That was it. That's where you get it. That's all it is. And so the idea of fries and a Coke, if you will, right, of where they get that additional revenue now, I think is what the study showcases out. And by and large, by the questions you're continuing to ask in the study, right, of where's your revenue coming from and how's it coming from, there's a pretty fair amount that where it's kind of relatively neutral across the board, whether it's from hardware components, software components, service, merchant services aspect pieces. I think that's also what makes Avar healthy, is that they're not dependent on one aspect of their business for the lion's share of their revenue, right?
Yes, that is correct. They're not riding just with one vendor.
Yeah, there's a few, you have the few in the study. I think there's a few groups that, they're 90 plus percentile. I mean, obviously ISVs are heavy on the software side, right? Yeah. Groups that are focused in the ISO space from merchant services that happen to bundle that with software, they're going to be really heavy on the merchant services side aspect because they're choosing that from a business model standpoint. But in the VAR space, they're figuring out, hey, here's the different avenues that I can pick up revenue and turn that, this is my core and recurring, okay, hardware components, ancillary services and software pieces. I think when, if I can make a request for you, Jim, I think a good question maybe for next year's survey is to break up the software component of what you're asking is where do the revenues come from, point of sale related revenues versus alternative revenues, right? So I think that would be an interesting pickup to see how they're improving on those ancillary models, whether it's an MSP
that's a really good point, Jamie.
Right.
Yeah.
Or whether it's, hey, we've got a lot of, we see a ton right now of payroll companies coming in and trying to enter the marketplace, much akin to how the ISO communities entered the marketplace years ago, where they're really looking for that bundled kind of service. Because it seems like, especially in hospitality, the payroll groups would like to have that human capital niche, very similar to what we do. They may rely on big business technology, but it's really about having a relationship piece in the payroll services. So I'm curious to see, for VARs, where their revenue components are that are outside of their core offering, right?
Core offering, like the core software that they might have. Yeah. It's a really good point. And maybe that pans out that you're starting to see more and more people embracing these other bolt-on type of technologies and or solutions. You would have to think with all the run that agentic AI and AI is getting that some of those are going to start creeping in as well. But that's a really interesting question. It might enlighten a little bit of the flavor of what's actually going on in the market. Yeah.
I just want to say full disclosure, it's a great point. I'm going to make a note and put it in my KPI folder for next year because within 60 days after compiling the report, I don't want to see any more numbers again. I've turned off numbers. It's almost like you eat 5 gallons of ice cream. You're like, I can't see any ice cream for a while. So it's a great point, but I'll consider it when my brain is calmed down. Hey, before we take a commercial break, Dean, you said you wanted one more thing about the payments.
I apologize, Jim. You asked for one, I gave you 3, but I think this is a really good call out. That's are we too dependent on payments? And so when you look at the survey results, 39.9% of VARs responded that they generate half or more of their revenue through payments. So I'm a marketing guy, you look at the numbers and of course, everybody talks about most companies have 80-20, right? Where 80% of the revenue is coming from 20% of their folks. But man, when you're generating half of your revenue through payments, it makes me a little bit nervous. This has always made me a little bit nervous. And here's why. You can't, from a marketing standpoint, you can't differentiate on payments, right? Now you're getting into a numbers game. Well, theirs is a fraction of percent better than yours. And, that's just not where you want to be, right? It's concentrating the risk kind of on that one revenue stream that is, by the way, now half of your revenue stream. And so, it's hard to make the arguments around your expertise and stuff like that when you're relying on payments. So to me, that continues to make me nervous. And then it got me thinking a little bit about where we're at, and we're starting to analyze soft pause and how that's going to start affecting kind of the channel and where it's going. Now, the good news is that really soft pause we're seeing it as more of an additive technology, not a substitute. Meaning if you have a system, a POS system and all that in place, you're adding soft pause by enabling maybe frontline workers to now take payments via a personal device or whatever out on the shore, out on the floor, or they're line busting now by using soft pause. But it's something that's really intriguing that I think we now need to kind of keep our ear to the ground on how that's going to be impacting. It could have a positive impact on the amount of transactions that are happening, so that's good. But one area that they are talking about where you could see some erosion, again, it goes back to that, what I would call a traditional POS reseller who's just doing maybe the hardware only sales, or primarily hardware only sale, or single lane sales. Soft pause might start eroding a lot of that business out there. And so, it's something out there. So, and again, it just had me thinking, Jim, is like, man, if you have so much of your revenue dependent on payments, there are some disruptive technologies that are coming down the road there.
Yeah, the less sophisticated resellers, the less sophisticated like ISOs and agents, they're on the railroad tracks, they hear the train coming behind them, and they realize they gotta do something different. Jamie, before we take a commercial break, what's your take on what Dean raised in terms of potential over-reliance on payments and lack of differentiation potentially?
I'm gonna be a little bit of devil's advocate on you, Dean.
Oh, good.
And the reason why I say that is that I think payments related revenue is fine, and I think that it's definitely an aspect, an avenue that anybody in the space should be able to take advantage of, where opportunistic pieces is. I think the data components, that I agree with you, the 50% number is exactly what it is. Where I'm going to play a little bit of devil advocate piece is that with a lot of reseller communities, the payments engine can end up just being the collection method of the technology related revenue, right? So, and I think you're correct in that it exposes a potential opportunity where, for instance, if let's say we have resellers that turn around and say, hey, look, the point of sale software is free, you're not paying for service and support, we give you the hardware, we give you all of this because you're doing a merchant services contract with us at some fixed rate, right? Where there's enough margin in all of that to kind of cover the aspects there. So the question is that really just payments related revenue? I would tell you that it's not. I think their collection method is the payments related component. And I think those numbers can really skew kind of how, if you will, a reseller or a business kind of constructs where their revenue sources are coming from. So I think it also opens up, to your point though, it also opens up kind of you to be in this single defense mode of a customer turns around and says, well, hey, I'm paying a 3.6% or a 3% or a 2.7 or whatever flat rate. And they don't understand what all of the billing components or all your service components that are going into that, right? So for that, so twofold kind of one. On one hand, I agree with you that, it opens you up to kind of being this, a customer perceived that they're going to compare apples to apples in a competitive space. But for you as a VAR or reseller, you need to make sure that somebody understands the components of that. The payments ecosystem is just your collection methodology that's subsidizing all of these other things that you're doing. And so for us, I think it's really important to make sure that that separation is out there. And if you're I like to look at revenue sources as they're independent, right? So that's nice that, for instance, I may have a cost of me to do software. I may get that money from revenue, but I'm going to make sure that I book that out in an appropriate way so that I know, it's not all payment related revenue, or it's not just all software related revenue. So I think there's kind of a duality there of making sure that you as a VAR, you're not being as much as a customer wants the simplistic idea of, hey, I get everything for a free flat rate, is well, make sure you're defining what free is and make sure you're putting dollars on that, so that you can, if a merchant or a customer comes to you and says, oh, I want to tweak this one thing, what does that look like, right? Or how does that shift, or how does that change your revenue or your pricing model as a business?
I think that's all fair. And, as again, when I think about it, what makes me nervous about it is just reliant on that. And that gets me into a mindset of, hey, if that was me, I gotta add additional services just to kind of balance out some other revenue sources that in case a storm hits somewhere, where that I can weather that storm because I've gone to the RSPA ultimate list of recurring revenue and products and services, and I've added on additional services that I can generate revenue from and not become so reliant on the payments. But everything you said is spot on, Jamie. Yeah.
I think I would even go one step further and tell you, I'm not, I think relying on your income source is your income source for your business. If your business model is, hey, we're a payments focused entity and company, and this is our sales model, and this is what we're doing. I'm not saying that there's nothing wrong with that, right? And because that's your model and that's your business. Yeah. I think one of the things that in a lot of cases, when you're a VAR or reseller partner, and especially in the ISO space where you're utilizing payments as a residual based form, that you're not the entity collecting that money, technically you're not in control of that money. I think we all know stories of whether it's ISVs, VARs, hybrids, you name it, who ended up seeing that revenue source get truncated due to no necessary fault of their own, or even maybe a fault of their own, right? So, yeah, right. And I think that's something where I'm a big fan of being in control of your own revenue. So where it's coming from and how it's coming from, making sure you own your own revenue streams and where they're at. So I think that's part of that piece that concerns me a little bit, is that if all of your revenue is coming from the payments ecosystem, unless you're the entity that's in control of that of the actual money flow, you potentially are kind of, what happens if you don't get a check one month? What happens if you don't get paid your residuals one month, right? It's not so much that it's bad that that's where you're making your revenue. It's that you're not collecting it. You're not in control of it.
Yeah, it's different collecting your own rainwater and filtering it and drinking it than counting on the pipe to stay turned on because somebody could and turn it off or turn it down, and you're in
somebody
a little bit of trouble.
Somebody can do it on purpose. They could do it on accident. That's right. And like I said, we all know probably a multitude of people that, buy rates change and shift or turn off or go very, very differently for some groups. So I think that's part of the concern. I think maybe, Dean, where that's part of that aspect is that's that risk-related revenue of not collecting, right? Or not being paid that. So not only just being not being
the water company could get acquired by another water company and change where the pipes go. a lot of ways we can take this. Hey, we're going to pause right here to take a quick break and thank these channel-focused companies who support the RSPA community and make this podcast and video series possible. Our gold sponsors are Blue Star, CoCard, Epson, Global Payments, and ScanSource. Also, we want to make sure everybody knows registration is now open for Retail Now 2026, the Retail IT Channel's #1 trade show, education conference, and networking event. This year's event is set for July 26th through 28th at the new Caesars Forum Conference Center attached to Harrah's and the Link Hotel. For more information, visit gorspa.org/Retail Now. Retail Now is where the industry meets. So we have about 10 minutes left. I have one number that I'd like to throw at you guys. So again, this is the 10th edition of this report. I called out a bunch of numbers, but you guys highlighted a lot of what I did in terms of the success of the channel, right? It's 46.4% of VARs and ISVs reported double-digit sales growth for 2025. Only 9.9% projecting flat or declining sales. 55% saying at least 2/3 of their revenue is recurring. And that leads me into this section of the report, and Jamie, I'm hoping you can comment on it first. So we labeled it Recurring Dream, Retail IT Solution Providers Champion as a Service Model. So for the third consecutive year, more than half of respondents said they were completely transitioned, that meaning 85 to 100% of their revenue is recurring, or mostly transitioned, 2/3 or more is recurring. And survey respondents expect that figure to increase to 66 26.3% in 2026. So Jamie, you and I, like, we go way back, and this is the main thing that you and I have talked about over the years, preaching recurring revenue. Did you ever think we'd see a day where POS resellers embrace the as a service model to this degree?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I think there, because there has to be, right? It's the smart business model. It just is. If you want to, uh, I guess I would say is that, we used to talk about, if you're not getting into the recurring revenue game, you just bought yourself a job is all you've done. In the entrepreneurial space. The idea and the aspect of building a recurring revenue model business is really, you're building a business is what you're building. You're building a legacy, a business. You're building something that is, let's just call it this. It's a target for acquisition. It's going to give you the opportunity for leveraging yourself, right? Nobody's going to leverage a business or allow, investment in an opportunity. So whether it's you're seeking targeted acquisition, outside investment, if you're really truly looking for growth, the recurring business model, the recurring revenue model, you just have to be there. There's no real other way. We are in a soft asset business, if you will. So we don't have real estate, right? We're not churning big, we don't have commodities pieces that we're chaining over. And so we're service orientated groups. And so we're really truly valued as a business based upon our recurring revenue or our future revenue pieces. And one of the best things I can tell you personally from a business standpoint was getting to the point of realizing that, hey, guess what? We met our nut without selling anything. Right?
Yep.
Is that it's a very, very liberating space where you're like, well, what do you mean? I don't need to sell anything next month in order for me to make payroll or make profit, or you're right. That's a really, really interesting and comfort space to be in, and a very positive light. So the short answer, I guess, would say, yes, I believe that you would get there because that's where it should be, right? It's the idea in the business, the service that we're orientated in and how we're working. And I think also it's the aspect of, I would also tell you that long tail we kind of talk about a little bit. The reason why it's a long tail is because it should actually be 75, 80%, 90%, right? You're always going to have one-time things that happen from a sales standpoint in our business, in our community. But the bread and butter of what you do, really, I think the goal should be a 75 plus recurring revenue target from an organizational standpoint. Whether you're in the VAR space, ISV space, I don't care what space you're in. If you can figure out how to be, if Blue Star can figure out how to get into 75% recurring revenue space, that's because just the leverage pace of what you're doing, you're much more impervious from a business fluctuation standpoint, from an environment standpoint, from the chaos standpoint. And then you just get into these different things, which is the idea of outpacing, acquisition, outpacing attrition, and being able to give into investable models, whether it's for your own business or getting it from outside sources.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jamie. And when you look at a little bit more of the information that was in the survey here, it backs that. I think it backs the fact that the industry has gotten the message that you need to have recurring revenue as a part of your portfolio, because the M&A sentiment that's pulled out of the survey shows that maybe we're at a little bit of an inflection point. So, for the first time ever, this survey, you have 17.4% of people that plan to be acquired, and buoyed by 17.4, the same amount that aspire to be acquired. But really the call out that I wanted to throw here is that hybrids in the survey, 45.5 now aspire to be acquired. So what does that tell you? That tells you exactly what Jamie was just talking about. I think these companies have been building those models to be in a position where they could be acquired or look more favorably when they're sold or acquired. And I think that comes out in the survey, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and one thing that I guess I'll share with the folks who've just only been in the POS space, when I was at Business Solutions Magazine, we got to peer into the managed services world. It was very common to build up a business over 5 or 10 years, sell it, and then go start another business inside of the industry. Like you had almost these serial entrepreneurs who could stay in the industry, where typically in our world, it's like another family member or somebody's been doing it for like 60 years or something of that nature. So that could be a new thing. So, all right, we've only got a few minutes left. I'm going to skip over anemic VAR marketing spend headline, not because of time, but I'm trying to spare your feelings, Dean. I don't want you to have to go through this again another year. But Dean, what I want to do is the final question of the survey says, please describe any opportunities, threats, or challenges you see for your business. So the most mentioned threat was competing with the direct sold POS solutions backed by payments companies and venture capital firms. That's kind of where we started. And so I want to each get your take on some of the comments related to that threat. So I pulled out some special ones for you. Hard to compete with free, being overrun by direct sellers, VC, and credit card owned POS solutions, including the one we resell. VC and private equity continue to disrupt the channel. Merchants struggle to see the value of a local guy and go right to the internet. POS is a very challenging business with very few awards, nothing like the past. And my favorite, we must be idiots to stay in this business for so long. So who, Dean or Jamie, who wants
some of that? I'll take
All
some
right.
of that because I'm a glass half full kind of guy.
Okay.
You know, I don't. Yeah, I mean, okay, you can just concede the point and say everything that you just read off is valid. I see that there's still huge opportunity out there. It's just a matter of your perception and how you adopt to what's happening in the marketplace. Are they going away? No, they're not going to go away. You have to address that, but there's ways in which you can. So I focused more in on the folks that saw the huge opportunity, quote, huge opportunity in the channel to deliver even more value via services, support, and solutions tailored each unique business versus the one size fits all model. That is exactly the mindset you should be in. Or, quote, we continue to add additional vertical markets to expand our client base. I think that's brilliant. Or, quote, growth opportunities, both existing customers and new in different verticals as well. So, and then finally, to your small town one, for us, the opportunity is in small towns where we can deliver more value than our competitors. I don't know, man. Those are the people that are looking at this right and leveraging, certain facts that are in the marketplace to their advantage and winning and growing. That's my take on it.
I appreciate, and when we wrote the headline for this section, we did the glass half full about the huge opportunity, because a headline in a report that said we're all idiots would probably not be good from a marketing standpoint. So, Jamie, you've got the last word on this. I guess I should ask you: are we all idiots? Like, what is your take on how some of these resellers feel about competing against the big guys?
To mince words, if you think you're an idiot, get out of the business. Go do something else. You don't like it, you don't like the business, go do something else. I think there's plenty of opportunity. I think RSPA, not to plug you too much here, but the idea of partnerships is how you overcome, right? And how you're able to do. Nothing is free. There is no free lunch. There is no free lunch ever. It's not how it works. Understand the business model. Understand what those groups are doing. The capital invest. What are they doing? They're banking on, and they have all the investment that they can. Why? Because there's recurring revenue that comes from it. So, figure out there are plenty of partnerships that are members and groups, part of RSPA, that are more than happy to help you out with programs, plans, and opportunities for you to be able to offer a free point of sale solution. You can do that yourself regardless of your size, whether you're the 3-person office or the 100-person office. There are opportunities that are there. They are abound. You are simply just not knocking on enough doors, asking enough questions, utilizing the resources that are available to you via RSPA. So I would say is kind of a combination of all these things is one, the pessimism, keep your pessimism home, keep your glass half full at home, go get in a different business. I don't know what else to tell you. Sell, right? Get out, right? Or just walk away.
Right.
So if you don't like it, get out. So that's one. Two is that here's the other thing. If you don't like it, you want to get out, guess what? If you were smart enough to pay attention to everything RSPA has been preaching for the past 10, 15 years, however long we've been on the road of recurring revenue, guess what? You're going to be able to take some of that private equity money and get it for yourself and put it in your pockets because you built exactly what they're looking for and the exact reason why they're investing in the marketplace. So that's the thing that I look at and see here is one, understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, and mimic. And there's enough partnerships that are out there in the space that you can make your own opportunity. And on top of it, you can do it with the small broad approach, right? The human capital approach, the client services approach, the not 1-800, right? I think we get comments. We have the ribbon, Jim, that what is it? Not 1-800 one-on-one, right? So
yeah.
One-on-one,
not
wins.
1-800. Yep.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. So one-on-one, not 1-800, right? So we actually had that in our booth. We were at a bar nightclub show, and somebody was like, "Oh, I really like it." So, but that's kind of the point here is that how do we in the niche community or the smaller and the medium-sized business group is how do we compete in that space? As we compete what we're good at, which is relationships and human capital and service and support, and then we rely on our partnerships and groups and entities in our space to help us with the product offering, the finance opportunities that we can compete on that level.
Excellent. So full disclosure, the one-on-one, not 1-800, I like you gave it the RSPA credit for having that on a ribbon. We borrowed that, stole it from a member, but we told them, just like I told you, can we use that in our marketing? Because they brought that up on one of our community calls. We're like, that's really, really good. I'll also just say this. So to tie together what you guys have been saying about how do you approach and how do you view, there's a big mindset thing. I talked to a reseller earlier this week, a VAR who's also doing software, because somebody said to them, the thing was about DMARs, direct marketers, and having some of these big guys as part of the association. And somebody said, oh, you do not want them as part of it. And so they said, call this person. And this person's actually said, I am happy to have them at the table because I'm losing deals to them. I would like to lose what they're doing that's more valuable or what they're saying that I need to be doing better. And that's kind of what you guys said. So Dean, I'll give you the last word on that. Is that kind of the healthy approach to this? Is not just you talked about seeing the opportunity, but then also seeing in your competition, do a scout report on them and see how can you improve your business to beat them at their own game.
100%. If your customers are listening to them, there's a reason why they're listening to them, right? There might be some competitive advantage they have. You need to learn from that and adopt from that. Most of what's being offered in the marketplace, you can probably augment what you have today just by simply understanding what it is, where are those threats, and then responding to them. So it is not a stick your head in the ground and say, well, woe is me. Others are going to just dominate in this new space. Heck no. You can learn those new technologies, those new applications that are being developed, and go to market with them just as effectively.
Excellent. Well, that does it for this episode of The Trusted Advisor. We hope you enjoyed our discussion. I certainly did. Now, if you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe to the RSPA YouTube channel and the Trusted Advisor podcast so you never miss an episode. And as we said earlier, you can secure your own copy of the 2026 RSPA Retail IT Channel KPI study at our website, gorspa.org, or by Googling RSPA Industry Reports. Before we go, big thanks again to Dean Riverman from Blue Star, Jamie Interdonato from R-Power for sharing their wisdom with us today. Thanks also to RSPA Marketing Director Chris Arnold for his production work, Joseph McDade for our music, and last but not least, thanks so much to you for listening. Our goal at the RSPA is to accelerate the success of our members in the retail technology ecosystem by providing knowledge and connections. For more information, visit our website at gorspa.org. Thanks for listening and goodbye, everybody.